Dear learners and viewers, good wishes to all. This is Dilip Kumar Roy, Associate Professor, Department of English, Carmichael College, Rangpur. First of all, I would like to welcome you to my online class. Today, I will discuss various rhetorical devices which are important for the students of honors first year. But before going to discuss rhetorical devices, we should know what rhetoric is.
The word rhetoric has come from the Greek word rhetor, which means a public speaker. It is the art of speaking before the public in a persuasive manner. According to Aristotle, rhetoric was the art of discovering and applying all the possible means of persuasion on any subject. According to Locke, rhetoric was the art of speaking with propriety, elegance, and force. In ancient Greece, people who hoped to hold public offices had to learn rhetoric well, because they had to persuade, convince, and impress others through their speeches. But in course of time, it was extended from speech to writing as well. Now, it is concerned with rules of composition. It aims at making the expression beautiful and forceful. So to make one's expression graceful, rhetoric is needed. There are many rhetorical devices in English literature, like simile, metaphor, climax, anti-climax, irony, etc. First of all, let us discuss simile. Simile is a figure of speech based on similarity. The word simile has come from the Latin word similis, which means likeness. So, a likeness between two different persons, objects, or events is clearly stated here. The point of similarity is explicit in a simile. In a word, it can be said that a direct comparison is made in a simile by using the words like, as like as, so, such, etc. For example, number 1, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Number 2, she is as beautiful as a rose. And number 3, my heart is like a singing bird. In the first example, I have been compared to a cloud, but they are different in nature. The word as is present here, and a direct comparison is made. So, this is the best example of a simile. Now, let us discuss metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech based on similarity. In this figure of speech, we find an indirect comparison between two different persons, things, or events. That is, the comparison is not clearly stated here. The point of similarity is implied. So, it is said that a metaphor is an implied simile. A metaphor differs from a simile only in form, not in substance. For example, he is the pillar of the state. Number 2, she is a rose. In the second example, she has been compared to a rose. They are different in nature, but the comparison is not direct, and the word as or like is not present here. Then we will discuss personification. Personification is a figure of speech which is based on imagination. In this figure of speech, both the inanimate objects and the abstract ideas are attributed with the qualities of living beings. This attribution of the qualities of living beings to both the inanimate objects and the abstract ideas is known as personification. For example, number 1, the moon is smiling. Number 2, the daffodils are dancing in the breeze. In the first example, the moon is an inanimate object which has been given the quality of a living being. Like a living being, it is smiling. The important aspect here is that to apprehend the smile of the moon, imagination is a must. So, this is a good example of a personification. Therefore, let us discuss another figure of speech, that is hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech which is based on imagination. In this figure of speech, things are presented as much greater or less, better or worse than they really are. Here, something more is said, either for serious or for comic purpose. For example, number 1, 10,000 saw I at a glance. And number 2, the house roofs seems to heave and sway. In the first example, the poet has said something exaggeratedly. This is our common tendency. When we like a thing, we praise it too high. Again, when we dislike a thing, we paint it very roughly. Now, let us discuss climax. Climax is a figure of speech based on difference. The word climax has come from the Greek word climax, which means a ladder. Generally, in a ladder, we go up from a lower stage to a higher one. Similarly, in a climax, we rise from a less important idea to a more important one. The words, the phrases, and the ideas are arranged here in an ascending order of importance. For example, I came, I saw, I conquered. Number 2, some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. If we consider the second example, we find that the ideas are presented here from ascending order of importance. That is, from lower stage to a higher one. So, it is a fine example of a climax. Then we will discuss anti-climax. Anti-climax is a figure of speech based on difference. It is just opposite to climax. In this figure of speech, the words, the phrases, and ideas are arranged in a descending order of importance for comic purpose. For example, I conquered, I saw, I came. Number 2, he lost his wife, his child, his goose, and his dog. In the first example, the ideas are presented in a descending order of importance, that is, from highest to a lower one. Dear students, let us discuss another figure, that is Synecdoche. Synecdoche is a figure of speech based on association. In this figure of speech, the name of one thing is substituted for that of another, but the relation between the thing named and the thing meant is very intimate here. They are associated so closely that they cannot be physically separated without any harm. For example, number 1, his brain is working well. Number 2, her hand is writing fast. In the first example, brain has been used in lieu of a man, but the relation between the man and his brain is very close. They cannot be separated physically without any harm. So, it is a fine example of a synecdoche. Therefore, let us discuss metonymy. Metonymy is a figure of speech which is based on association. It is just opposite to synecdoche. Here, the name of one thing is substituted for that of another, but the relation between the thing named and the thing meant is not very intimate. They are associated so loosely that they can be physically separated without any harm. For example, number 1, I am reading Shakespeare, and number 2, the pain is mightier than the sword. In the first example, Shakespeare has been used in lieu of his writing, but the relation between Shakespeare and his writing is not very close. They can be separated physically without any harm. So, this is a good example of a metonymy. Dear learners, now we will discuss irony. Irony is a figure of speech which is based on indirectness. In this figure of speech, we find a contrast between appearance and reality, a contrast between what one says and what one really means, a contrast between what one thinks and what one does. It also refers to a contrast between expectation and achievement. For example, he is my best friend because he leaves me in my danger. Number 2, he is very punctual as he enters the classroom after the roll call. In the first example, there is a contrast between what one says and what one really means. Here, one thing is said, but another is meant. So, this is a fine example of an irony. Therefore, let us discuss oxymoron. Oxymoron is a figure of speech which is based on difference. In this figure of speech, two contradictory ideas are placed side by side for raising a striking effect. For example, he is carefully careless. Number 2, she is regularly irregular in the class. In the second example, two contradictory words, regularly and irregular, have been placed side by side. At the same time, it arises a sudden effect in the minds of the readers. So, this is a good example of an oxymoron. Now, we'll discuss epigram. Epigram is a figure of speech which is based on difference. It refers to a brief and witty expression which gives a striking thought. It may be aphoristic. Besides, it may be either complimentary or satiric. According to Professor Bain, epigram is an apparent contradiction in language. For example, failure is the pillar of success. Number 2, there is a pleasure in poetic pain. The first example is very witty and aphoristic. It may be explained in different ways. Apparently, it seems to be absurd, but it has a valid meaning. Dear students, now we will discuss an interesting figure of speech, that is pun. Pun is a figure of speech which is based on sound. In this figure of speech, we find duplicity of meaning under the same sound. In other words, it can be said that the same sound bears different meanings here. Again, the same word is used here to express different senses. For example, his knowledge on sound is not sound. And number 2, I have no will to follow my father's will. In the first example, the same word sound has been used, but it bears different meanings. The first sound is a chapter related to physics, and the second sound means good. So this is a good example of a pun. Therefore, let us discuss onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is a figure of speech which is based on sound. In this figure of speech, the sounds of the words express their senses. In other words, it can be said that the meaning of the word is suggested by sound here. For example, number 1, the lion is roaring. Number 2, the tiger is howling. In the first example, the sound of the word roaring suggests its meaning. It implies shouting or loud sound. Dear students, finally, we will discuss an important figure of speech, that is alliteration. Alliteration is a figure of speech based on sound. In this figure, the same letter, syllable, or sound is repeated in the same line of verse. It brings a sensuous pleasure to the ear. Through repetition of the same sound or letter, it makes a line emphatic. For example, alone, alone, all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea. Number 2, the fair breeze blew, the white foam flew. In the second example, the same letter B has been repeated. Again, the same letter F has been repeated. It creates music or sensuous pleasure to ear. So, it is a fine example of an alliteration. Dear learners and viewers, this is all. No more today. Again, we will meet. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you very much.